Hello, I'm Michael Swaim, and welcome back to Tales from the Pit. This is your content warning. This episode, I'll be speaking once again with Jamila Dawson about what it's like to work as a sex therapist and to generally demystify the practice of sex therapy. But far more potentially traumatic, I have also decided to share some stories from my own wild sexual history in the introduction. Why? Because, much like grief, addiction, and mental illness, I believe that sex, and the wide variety of ways in which it can express itself, desperately needs some destigmatization around it. Shame, guilt, fear, and confusion were all a big part of my early sex life, and I wish I had felt more comfortable discussing what I was going through at the time. And that's not to say that poly or unconventional relationships can never work. They just aren't me. This is the saga of how I came to that realization at great personal cost and by showing lots of strangers my wiener. I'd like to point out that no situation I describe or took part in involved anything but full consent from all involved, and safe sex practices were always taken. So this is not a crime scene, just some good old-fashioned mental scarring, the kind I think we all get in our 20s. From thinking we know more about ourselves than we actually do. So, Mom, I know you listen to these. Cousin Samantha, I know you especially like Tales from the Pit. Maybe seriously just skip this one. I don't know. Just throwing it out there, or just skip the intro at least. After which, I have a perfectly lovely conversation with Jamila that won't make things unbearably awkward at the next family reunion. As for those of you who aren't related to me, prepare for some frank depictions of hilariously awful sex, and as little description of my penis as I could get away with. I mean, I'm not a monster. Let's reach back. And no, that's not a reach-around joke, although I do mean it metaphorically. Let's reach far back, into the closet of my psyche, all the way up to the top shelf, past the old ski boots, minor adolescent embarrassments, and DVDs filled with family photos transferred from negatives and then never watched. Past the cobwebs, the floppy double-ended dildos, and the deeper shames. Even past the unaired series finale episode of Cracked After Hours, which yes, really exists, and no, you will never ever see. Get up on those goddamn tippy toes and reach all the way back to the end, to that forbidden hiding place where the Christmas presents would normally be, except in this metaphor, the present would be a mind present. You get it. Way there, at the back of my brain closet, is an artifact, a vestige from another age, much like my penis itself. It's a slide carousel, and no, not a carousel of wood and pony, but one of boring memories, projected for the whole family to see and lubricated by means that we don't really need to get into right now. Yes, I am aware the box is labeled Old Christmas Tree Lights. That's just because we moved. Please hand me the box. Because you see, there's something very special about these slides. These slides were never meant to be seen, and I'm not even totally sure where the images came from. Maybe television. But try as I might, the slides are mine, and the slides are indestructible. And I certainly don't dare take them out with the trash for fear of being blackmailed by a savvy raccoon. So I figure, all else fails, I may as well get it over with and project them, and see if that helps them fade. Okay, so this first slide's my penis, but it's flipped. There we go. It should actually lean to the left like that. You kind of have to squint. It was dark, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, okay. Here's me and my ex, freshly married, driving back from a desert camping trip. That was the first time she suggested that we might want to try an open relationship. We were each other's first hookups. And wouldn't it be fun to see what it's like to be with other people? Spoiler alert, no. All pornography to the contrary. Here's, okay, well, that's my penis again, but there's a point to it this time. Or should I say there isn't a point to it, because it's flaccid. See, do you see my flaccid penis there? Anyway, trust me, it is. They say that the body gives you its own clues. In retrospect, maybe the fact that 95% of the threesomes, trysts, and group situations I took part in left me nauseous and unable to achieve an erection were clues. Who can say? Certainly not me at age 21, which is why you can see the clear look of surprise and horror in my eyes as that very nice elderly woman removes her dentures in order to service me orally. Yes, this happened. Yes, I was too polite to stop it in the middle. And no, I didn't finish. Although if guys could fake orgasm, for me, this would have been the time. Speaking of variety being the spice of life, as you can see here, all the folks I had sex with during my failed marriage were kind enough to get together and line up, usual suspects style. God, I hope they didn't talk to each other. And to answer your first question, no. Unfortunately, I did not have sex with Benicio del Toro. I just wanted him in there as a reference point. But I did have some kind of failed or confusing sexual encounter with everyone else in this lineup. And I mean everyone. From toned, milfy soccer moms with husbands who want to watch, to group sex with several very large women at once, to friends and fans, and of course, lots of single folks my own age who knew I was in an open relationship, but that's less juicy. So I photoshopped in a giraffe licking my asshole. See that? Huh? Photoshopped a slide. That's hard to do. Oh, this is a good one. This is me blowing a few guys. That was actually fun. Seriously, I can see the appeal. Although then a guy made out with me, and my genetic cisness resonated on a deep level. So, for me, lesson learned, the penis is a lovely place to visit. I wouldn't want to live there. Glad I tried it once. Scratch that, 5 times. Fuck, okay. I don't like this slide. Can we skip this one for now? Thank you. Here's my wife and I promising each other jealousy would never be an issue. Because, of course, by our early 20s, we'd already transcended mere mortal concerns, like emotional reaction. Here's us screaming at each other because she fucked a dude in Spain because she thought I knew she was going to do that, but I didn't. So then I fucked someone to make it even, but then it was someone she knew. And I didn't know that that was part of the thing, that I wasn't supposed to do that. So we were screaming, see? And then here's us promising each other jealousy will never become an issue again this time. Here she is telling me that when I touch her, it feels like she's being raped. Here's me sleeping on the floor of my office with the door locked. Here's us promising each other that jealousy will never become an issue again. You know what? There's a lot of those. Let's just move on. Oh, this is me at the pyramids. Nothing to do with the sex stuff. Wrong carousel. This is my wife and me, and you might not know this if you've never been through the process, interviewing to be allowed to come to a big orgy party at a mansion in the San Diego Hills. It's exactly like a job interview, except instead of asking about your greatest skills and biggest flaws, they ask about your STD status, if you could possibly bring a unicorn with you, which is an unattached female, and whether you're going to be able to fuck other people in front of one another without jealousy becoming an issue. Which we said was not a problem, baby. And I think it's important to say, at no point during the roughly 6-year period I'm describing did I ever think anything was wrong except with me. Except with my ability to get in the mix. And an F and S with the best of them, you know? I wanted to be, well, Michael Swaim, but Michael Swaim from Agents of Cracked. A liberated, magic, pansexual hippie who can share his love freely and interchangeably with all of God's creatures except the children and animals, like some Voltron of love and sex. I wanted to live that porn star life. And when I couldn't, the one thing that it never occurred to me to ask myself was if I really wanted to, or if I just thought I wanted to. And if that sounds like you, please ask yourself that question. No one is judging your sex life but you and possibly your partner or partners. But no matter what, your sex life should be fun and it should feel safe. You deserve that. Anyway, this is me at the doctor's office getting my testosterone levels checked because I assumed it was my problem that I didn't come when that dentures lady blew me. I thought I said skip this slide. I don't like... Can we just put it at the end? Let's save that slide for the end, please. No fun. Oh, okay. Here is us at the swingers party. Huh? Not, eating any of the buffet food because obviously watching a bunch of nude people scope each other out. The highlight of the evening? Chilling naked in the hot tub and chatting with older couples. I genuinely enjoyed just getting to know about them. If I've ever seen the open relationship thing work well, it has been from middle-aged people who already sort of have their shit figured out. I know, you wish it could be you while you're still young and hot, but that doesn't seem to be how it usually works. The low light of the evening? Anytime I was expected to do something sexual. No wonder we only went back 30 more times, right? Here's me and my wife, and an objectively hot sex kitten type blonde chick, headed out on the town to have a passionate threesome on the beach. You see that's them making out in the back seat. I'm driving. You can catch my eyes in the rear view, silently weeping for reasons I couldn't elucidate at the time. There I was, in the middle of the hypothetical ideal sex scenario, aside from the sand and crevices issues, and all I could think was, why the fuck doesn't my partner want me? Only me. And why isn't there anyone I can talk to about this? Okay, no getting around it. Last slide. I'm not proud of this one. This is my current partner, finding the hard drive of saved sex tapes and pics sent to me over the years by playmates. She found it early on in our new relationship, and it almost destroyed it, and rightly so. I had fallen in love with her before figuring out my own damage, and that made things very, very hard at first. But it was being with Jennifer, with a partner who isn't concerned with power, who vibes with my monogamous savoir-faire, who constantly factors my happiness and well-being into her own calculations, that showed me what I'd been missing, showed me where the pain was so that I could start to heal it, showed me where the confusion lied so the fog could begin to clear. And although I'll always regret the pain that she had to endure as a result, I'm so grateful to have her in my life, and to have figured out my own place on the sexual spectrum through lots of trial and error. Here's one of my butthole. Couple more buttholes. Butthole. That's my taint. And okay, I think that's it. Thanks for indulging me, everyone, and this concludes your Cinnabon employee training.
Okay.
Because what we settled on was basically just demystifying the process of what a sex therapist is and does.
That's right.
So I imagine you've got that in your back pocket at any time.
But in some ways, that's like people expect something like a thing, and it's actually good. This is going to be boring.
Oh. No, that's fine. That's my responsibility, not yours. Do you mean people? What do people expect? We're rolling, by the way.
Oh, you. I think, well, one, there's still a lot of misconceptions. People think, one, they don't even know that sex therapists exist.
Right.
I run into that a lot.
Sure.
Another thing I run into is like, oh, you have sex with your clients? And it's yeah.
That never occurred to me at all.
I have gotten that multiple times, and it's like, no. While I'm a proud proponent of sex work, and I think that's important work that's not supported the way that it should be. Sex therapists are licensed by the state of California. They do not have sex with their clients.
Yes. I think there was a documentary that did the rounds. about a European sex therapist who did have sex with her clients.
Oh, wow.
As a way to like rekindle things between couples.
Was she like licensed by the city or the state or the country? Because
I don't know, but I think the takeaway point is that doesn't mean that that's what sex therapists do. That's why that was the subject of a documentary, because it was unique.
Yeah, like she's actually, and here that would be illegal. They actually give you a pamphlet.
I remember it was in like Eastern Europe. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I should do an intro. We're back in the pit for another tale from the pit with the fabulous Jamila Dawson. Thank you so much for coming back, Jamila.
It's wonderful to be back. I had such a great time before.
And Jamila is that was my first question, actually. Is there nomenclature that's more preferred than sex therapist? Or do you call it?
No, I am very proud to say I'm a sex therapist.
Great.
Some people might say, like, they'll go by their license, like I'm an
LMFT
or right. I wish I could see somebody's business card that says Sage of boning and bodily juices. No, I would be shocked and amazed if I saw that. But yeah, like you could say like, oh, I'm an LMFT or I'm a LCSW, but really like I'm very clear about like I help people with sex and relationships.
And I know through Jennifer, my lovely other half, LCSW, licensed
clinical social worker.
What is LMFT?
Licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
So they're very
great.
similar, but just slightly, just different consonants.
So if you find that a lot of people are not even aware that that's a specialty within therapy, let me ask, is it when you're going through the social worker pipeline, like educational pipeline, is it presented as an option among the specialties? Or when did you become aware that sex therapy was a thing? And then follow up, when did you start being interested in being like, I think that should be my specialty?
Well, they definitely, I wouldn't say that they, in school, whether you're an LCSW or an LMFT, I don't think they really talk about, they talk a lot in terms of couples therapy.
Very popular.
But people
branch.
are still really scared to talk about sex. A lot of couples therapists won't actually talk about sex with their clients, which doesn't make much sense, does it?
At all?
At all.
Every couples therapist I've been to, which I think is 3 or 4, they'll occasionally feel obliged to say, and how's the sex life?
Right.
Because the topic is our relationship, but that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you said, like obliged is like, oh, I gotta just, answer this question.
Yeah.
When it's like, that's usually what most people are coming in for. Our sex life sucks, or we've got an issue, or we want to try something different. Sex. So that's why I'm very clear. Like, I don't say couples therapist, I say sex therapist. And I got into it, thank goodness I was interested in it beforehand, because they don't really talk about it in school, but because I had worked at adult stores for, at that point, 7 or 8 years, and knew that I was interested in talking about sex, I came to my grad school program with like, no, I'm gonna be a sex therapist.
Nice.
And so I knew like that was what I wanted my training
Okay,
about.
I gotta pause and ask. Any amazing anecdotes from working at sex stores for 8 years?
So many.
Yeah, can we get one choice?
Oh God, it was
crazy thing that happened.
Well, first of all, it was a total pleasure to do that work, and I wish more couples therapists actually had to intern at a sex store.
Oh, interesting.
Because they'd stop being so judgmental. They'd stop making everything super simple. They'd see that there is such a variety of people out there, and that there's a lot of like need, and people are going to a sex store. They're not going to a therapist or a doctor.
You found among sex therapists, people who decided to become sex therapists, that they're judgmental about people's sexual proclivities?
Yes.
That's insane to me.
I'm passionate about the work that I do in terms of my clinical individual work, but my larger piece is like the sex therapy field radically needs to change. Who's in it, the training we get, the, again, how heteronormative it is, just focused on like, oh, it's basically just men and women, doesn't really talk about trans folk or gender non-conform. Like there's so much that it needs to change.
Wow.
So it's kind of like my bigger, but no, when I talk with other sex therapists and they're like, yeah, so my client wants to have anal and like, and I need peer consultation around that. I'm like, no, you go help them have like healthy, safe anal sex. Like that's not a problem.
Right.
Like there's questions you should ask around like, how's your partner, like how are you two going to do that together?
Right.
But you don't, like that's not a problem in and of itself.
No.
So I hear a lot of
not.
judgmental stuff that comes out of a very big, broad streak of sex therapists.
Do you find that you hang out with sex therapists a lot socially?
Absolutely not.
No? Okay,
I don't hang out with most therapists.
I was wondering if you're the one who's always like, shut up, that's fine.
I don't hang out with a lot of
Listen up,
therapists.
bro.
Pretty much, right? Because I kept running into that. I'm like, oh, you all were all therapists, but you have a really conservative idea about what sex is and who should be having it and what it should look like.
Right.
And that doesn't work for me. So there's a couple of sex therapists, Dr. Chris Donahue, who I adore. His work is brilliant. And we're a lot on the same page. So I love hanging with him.
Nice.
But yeah, for the most part, So in terms of working at the different adult stores, there's sweet stuff that I've seen. I remember I met a couple, they were from India. They had an arranged marriage. They'd only met, I want to say it was a week and a half before.
Wow.
They came into the store and they were like, we want to begin our married lives together. Can you tell us about like toys and...
We need a huge dildo. Yeah.
If they had asked that, I would have been like, why don't we slow that down a little bit?
All right.
But no, it was really about like they hadn't had sex yet. And so they literally were coming in to like, can you help us learn about what we need?
They really looked out that you were working there. I feel like 90% of the people who work at sex stores must just be on their phone being like, I don't know, dude, I'm just here to make minimum wage. You know what I mean?
There's two different types. There's what I call the sticky floor stores, which you can imagine what I mean by that.
Which is just high turnover employees who don't give a shit.
Exactly.
There to make the paycheck.
Not exactly very sexy. Sure. Like you don't know the products, all of that. And then there's places that are education based. And that would be places like Good Vibrations in San Francisco. They're amazing. I love them. I get no kickbacks. They're just amazing and education based.
Any places to recommend in LA?
The Pleasure Chest, the staff who work there. Yeah. Been there once or twice, maybe?
No, only heard of it.
What?
Well, nothing against going, but...
I tell everybody.
Jen and I only have gone to the ones in the Inland Empire. Long story.
Please go and have a different experience.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the staff there, they care. They are thoughtful. They are non-judgmental. They are enthusiastic. Yeah. I was very proud to work there.
Wonderful.
So there was like that couple. There were people who were curious about things that aren't legal. And so, you don't want to shame somebody, but finding a nice human way to say like, I can't sell you anything like that. We don't carry anything like that.
Sure.
What else? Just a lot of people kind of in pain, really. Yeah. Like wanting to be like, I want blowjobs. I don't know how to like find somebody and tell her what I want. Right. Or, we want to try something kinky and we don't know where to start, that kind of thing.
So that brings me very nicely to my next question, which is, do you find that is shame the number one issue people are combating when they come to a sex therapist?
Shame and misinformation.
Okay.
I would say like that combination, which can create some really painful knots in people's lives.
Right. Because most of us, well, I think a lot of us have some version of cobbling it together from pornography, the birds and the bees story, or like some weird analogy we heard as a kid. Right. And then like crappy 5th grade sex education. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like that's most
together.
People.
Right.
And then throw in some maybe cultural conditioning or religious conditioning.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely, bouillabaisse of just not goodness.
Okay. So what would you say? Well, I'll put it this way. I think this is a good narrative way to ask it. How did you start your practice? How do you start building a client base? And were you nervous, excited? Were your first clients like, do you remember those as heady days of glory or like finding your feet? And what kind of things have you realized, these are the main issues people come to me with?
Such great. Since I knew throughout grad school that I was going to walk into becoming a sex therapist and had already had that education piece, because I taught at the Pleasure Chest and other places, teaching about anal sex, teaching about fellatio, teaching about female ejaculation. So I had this like massive amount of great information about sex, and I was very clear with my colleagues, with my professors, like, hey, these are the people I want to work with. Like, LGBTQ straight folk, but it's about sex. That's what I want. So there was never any like confusion about that piece. I would say, and I've talked with other sex therapists. I was out, I'm going to edit where I was, but
Sure.
I was talking with somebody who's a sex therapist, and she said that she got bored by some of the work sometimes.
In sex therapy or in
Yeah,
traditional
in sex therapy.
Okay.
And it made me really sad because I have been I was a sex educator for 8 years. I've been doing my private practice for 3 years now. I don't get bored.
Okay. And I guess that's what I was wondering is, does everyone who comes to a sex therapist, is it 8 out of 10 times they have the same or analogous issue?
They've got similar issues.
Because I imagine society, we all live in the same boat that might give us the same issues.
Right.
Or
right.
is it incredibly like unique?
Well,
Every case is, you know?
I mean, it's like, would you say like, oh, there's all these different galaxies and they're so dull because it's like, they're all
just
galaxies.
a bunch of stars.
Right.
Right,
And like,
yeah.
you know, teeming masses of like
Sure.
the unknown. Like
Yeah.
which is how I feel about people, that
Okay.
even if we're talking about sex, even if it's roughly along the same lines, you know, of like shame or disconnection or desire, discrepancies,
Yeah.
the details are fascinating.
Yeah.
And like, and I work for my clients. I want them to have healthy, sexy, yummy, ongoing, dynamic relationships and experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you find you end up beginning that work in a, well, I guess when someone comes to you, are they already over the nervousness or shame? Or
No,
I imagine like even more than a regular therapist, you probably have to.
Right. There's definitely like
opening up phase takes a little while, maybe.
It can. And sometimes even if sometimes they won't even say that they're there for sex therapy. They're like, our relationship. But
Right.
what they mean
But
is their
they check
sex
that
life.
box on Yelp for a reason or whatever on
Right.
Psychology Today database. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's like,
Yeah.
I know you're probably here about sex. And the mistake a lot of therapists make is waiting for the client to talk about sex. They won't. For the most
Right.
part, if the clinician doesn't say, hey, if you want to talk about sex, if you want to talk
Yeah.
about positions or lubricants or explorations you want to try, like
Yeah.
you can do that here. If they don't set the marker, the client, I've talked to so many people who are like, I tried with my therapist, they never mentioned it, and so I didn't feel like I could mention it. And
What a waste of money for
what
them.
a waste, a waste of money, energy, time,
yeah.
all of it. So I'm very clear about like, no, these are the things, and I'll give them examples. Like,
Yeah.
you know, do you want more long-term therapy? Do you want me to do kind of like coaching with you? Like, we're trying to open our relationship. What are things that we need to know?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because where's the line between, or do you tackle both equally? Is sex therapy more about sex coaching? Literally like providing information, techniques, how to like work with your partner or partners in the situation? Or is it dealing with your emotional inner life around sex and with
It
your
could
partner?
be either
Or is
one,
it
and that's why
totally
I love
both?
it.
Okay.
Like that's why
Those are so different.
They are. They
types
really
of clients.
And that's why I get super. Why I'm not bored about my work,
Sure.
because I get to support people around. Hey, we want to try BDSM kink for the first time. What should we know?
But I grew up Mormon and I feel weird about it, right?
Right,
Like there's
exactly.
So
There's
many
these-
different issues.
Right,
that could
these
come in.
paradoxes, and yes, and it's really the education piece, and then whatever either background. You know, I've definitely, and I had it myself. Oh, as a Black person, am I allowed to like kinky sex, or is that just going to
Is
make
that
me a
not part
freak?
of my culture or
Right,
something? Yeah.
right. That's quote unquote white people stuff.
Right.
And so I had to do my own work around that. And I certainly support other people around like, no, if you're interested in this, what matters is like consent and enjoyment. Like that's the baseline. Not certain people get to have certain kinds of sex and others
Right.
don't. So yeah.
Then, the other side of that coin, I would wonder, and this is just conjecture, but how often is it someone coming in with a very like, not to say this in a negative way, but traditional sex life, who is just like, the spark is gone, what do we do? Because imagine that's got to be the other very popular reason to see a sex therapist.
Yeah, very common. And, when I worked at the stores, that was maybe one of the most common things we saw were straight couples who had been together for a while and we're like, we just want more excitement, but we don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, well, we can try everything from like, have you ever used a sex toy? And then sometimes it's walking people down, usually the guys, to be honest.
Really?
Their fear about sex toys.
Oh, you've never had your shirt off in front of her. Oh, we're walking it back now.
Sometimes it's like, we don't even turn the lights on.
Right.
Or I've had women who are like, I've never taken off my shirt or my top while we've had sex. So it was such a collision course of so many things. But I always laugh because there were a lot of guys who are like, what, a sex toy is going to replace me? I don't need that. Like, what's
interesting?
A lot of
threatened by the sex toy.
Right. And I'm like, it's a thing. You're a human. A thing cannot replace a human. And also, like, I'm kind of a Batman geek, and I'm like, okay, Batman is an amazing person, brilliant, gets stuff done, and did he not have a utility belt? Did Batman not use tools?
Right, yeah.
And that amazing rubber suit that now I'm kind of looking back like, oh, maybe I have a thing for that too.
Well, the Val Kilmer one especially. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was a little much. It was, I've seen other movies where that would have been much more appropriate.
Joel Schumacher in retrospect, I think, was trying to bring the gay agenda to the fore and be like, fuck you guys, I'm making gay Batman. Right. He has a 21-year-old sidekick boy. Let's stop fucking around with this.
There's always been the whole Batman and Robin.
And some kind of BDSM element.
I mean, come on, like,
he dresses up in rubber and beats people up and then
and really
flies into the night.
With the black card.
Yeah.
I have no doubt.
Here. Yeah.
I have no doubt that there's a dungeon in Wayne Manor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Alfred. Getting in on it.
You're keeping everything nice and like the lube is by the bed.
Oh, see, that's Alfred's a good man. Just serving everyone's needs.
See, I know. I have no doubt that Alfred is deeply service oriented, and I am. Those people are close to my heart. But it was so. Yeah, you see a lot of how do we get the spark back, and then more and more I'm seeing how do we navigate opening up a relationship, because poly and open relationships are. I wouldn't say they've like hit critical mass, but more and more people are wanting to experiment.
Okay, so let's take those one at a time. Are there common themes among people who want to get the spark back? Is like advice that you could give our listeners?
I would
broadly?
Say a lot of times it's accepting or becoming curious. A lot of times people stop being curious about their partner, or they're judgmental of like, oh, you're into that, as opposed to, oh, you're into that.
Yeah.
And then slowing down to see, hey, am I into that? Am I into it? Maybe I'm not totally turned on by it, but it's hot that you're into it. So, but I think people are caught in thinking that sex is this, there's normal sex and then everything else. When really, most of us are turned on by a huge variety of things if we'd let ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I really like people to, when you're having sex, to slow down and actually feel different sensations or try different ways of doing it. Try different positions. I talk about layering sensation. A lot of times we just like turn the lights off and like go to it.
Right.
And instead, literally, like, you don't have to put on Barry Manilow or Barry White, but like, is there music that like is hot to you?
Sorry.
Are there?
I'm just flashing back to the Seinfeld where George Costanza eats a pastrami on rye while they're having sex.
And to me, I'm like, if that's hot to you,
the difference is he's hiding it from the partner.
That's the problem.
It's like taking a bite and then going back to sex.
And I think any partner could feel the increasing aroma of
exactly. George, what are you doing?
Right, like something's wrong. What's going on? And to me, like, you could share that the things that make your sexuality totally unique are actually things that could bond the couple even further.
If you want to share a plate of spaghetti while you get it on, who's it hurt?
Right, if it worked for Ladies and the Tramp, like, why can't it work for us?
Exactly, yeah.
So I would say that, and then people both... again, I see this more in cis straight couples, but focusing on what I call the Bermuda Triangle, which is like nipple, clit, nipple, penis, nipple, like just focusing.
Male nipples. incredibly.
They can be quite sensitive.
Yeah, super not. Because also, well, I'm huge into. I mean, I'm working with my writing partner on a film that is in large part about this topic. But as the generation raised, where it's a big shift, where my dad, his memories of porn were scrambled Spice Channel and like finding a Playboy in the woods.
Right.
My memories of porn were the second I first became aware of having sexual feelings, seeing anything that any human had ever done for free immediately on the internet by typing in words like challenging myself, like, you know, I don't know, fishing line, splooge, water, and then
up comes right, not just one,
but like you find a subgenre of fetish you didn't know existed.
Never knew could possibly exist.
And I think
it's a major difference.
I just got to say, a big casualty in that whole thing, unless you have a diet of gay porn too, is male nipples. You never see straight porn where they service the nipples.
No, it's like straight downtown. It
is.
And that's actually been really interesting. People realizing, I know a lot of people, straight people who watch gay porn, because it has a whole different vibe to it.
Right.
But yeah, like focusing on like men's nipples, most men do not know their other erogenous zones. Like they're just like penis. And I'm like, and it's lovely and great and work on that. But I would like, if your body is a playground.
Yeah.
And I would love if more men were more comfortable receiving a variety of sensation and allowing themselves to experience.
Do you find that's a hang up that a lot of men feel like as the man they're the giver of sex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like even, you know, you laugh when you say, but that it really is like, oh, I do the thing. And usually
I do the things like, at her. Yeah, the
right,
sex things.
Right, not with her. Right. Right. I do sex things at her.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're losing out on receiving not just like an amazing blowjob, but also like all the other things that the human body is capable of, not a man's body, but a human body. And it also robs women too, straight women, of like getting, like playing with power dynamics and exploring what they're capable of. It's
yes, but I'm someone whose empathy is, which is interestingly why a poly relationship doesn't work for me in my case, is I'm a very strong romantic, and I really have the empathy thing where what turns me on the most is that I can tell she's having a great time, like it's really working. And
that's real.
I would never want to rob her of that. Like I feel like reciprocally, it's probably very exciting to her to know that like she loves me and I'm feeling super good and she's doing like a good job in that sense. Not that it's like pejorative, but you know what I mean? Like
pleasuring.
The pleasure circle is, it would be so weird if I was only to receive pleasure, which is why ultimately for me it turned out poly didn't really work, because for me I could never get to know someone well enough that I could put myself in their head. And then, and like I've had long talks with, lots of male and female friends, but I just remember my dad saying when I was like in my 20s, like, there's people who could have sex with a hole in the wall and the physical pleasure in their body is enjoyable enough.
Yeah.
And then there's people who like really have to be involved in it emotionally, and as a storyteller I just think, I don't know, or it was encoded from me at a young age by watching Hallmark movies, but I have the romantic aspect. Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so like what I would say what I really run into is this binary way of thinking about bodies and about sex. And it's so easy to get trapped in those, it's either I could get off with a hole in the wall or I need to be deeply connected to somebody. And I sidestep all of that.
Okay.
Because again, like I think of people like galaxies. So I'm like, a galaxy isn't this binary thing. It's, you have your own planets, your own solar systems within your whole, all these shifting dynamics. And that's what I'm interested in, not this either or. People get trapped by the binary all the time. And I say sidestep that and figure out, because I listen to you, and not that you need to be poly or anything, but if you have this amazing capacity to care deeply and to be deeply romantic to somebody, I'm like, well, there are people who would appreciate that deeply and who would allow themselves to be known deeply.
That's true.
And
There's
that,
only so much time in the day.
and that I think when I talk with poly people, that's
probably
what they run
really
up
is.
against.
Oh, do poly people complain about like
polysaturated, the
that's
term
so yeah.
of like
Is,
time,
I'm deeply
money,
in love with all 3 partners, but
I gotta go to
running
work.
out of time. Yeah.
And that's literally what happens if like I can love more people, but I'm actually bound by time, space, and economics.
But yeah, that's
if
interesting. I mean, and it's like you said, everyone's life is just a unique, beautiful journey that has to figure itself out. But the same could be said of imbalance in any direction. I'm someone who often overcommits to work ahead of time, realizes I bit off more than I could chew, and then
And here you are.
has, a horrible time of it until I chug through the work. And I could see that happening in a poly relationship.
Right, where you might be like,
where
oh,
you're
I could be
like,
totally available.
love is great, and I've discovered I can have the capacity to truly love, let's say, a dozen people. That doesn't mean you literally have enough hours to do that,
like,
and have a
literally.
job. Like, yeah,
Right. You're like, if that were my job.
if you're independently wealthy, maybe sure.
And that's the thing. I think there's a lot more people who are independently wealthy.
Do you worry about, because that makes me think of, and I know I don't mean to compare polyamory to, like, let's say,
Something pejorative?
Mormon-driven bigamy, where it's like the dude and he ranks his wives and they live in different floors of the house. But in being open about all the permutations that love and sex can take, yeah, how do you navigate the compass of, because obviously there can be such a thing as power dynamics that are now no longer, that are actually someone exploiting the other person. And I imagine that's so tough if you're like, we're both into BDSM. So it looks like a power dynamic, but it's not. But then what about the case
there's
where they're both into BDSM and someone is exploiting the other? Yeah.
Right. Because there can be unhealthy BDSM relationships.
Yeah.
And the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom is an organization that is around to advocate for kink folk. And on their website is a list of like, what is BDS, it literally is called BDSM versus abuse. And it talks about like, if you can't establish boundaries, if you can't talk to anybody about your relationship, if you can't have boundaries around safer sex protocols, like those are symptoms of an abusive relationship.
If they ever bypass the safe word, probably.
Right. Major thing. Like that's not respecting boundaries. And so I had this conversation recently. There was somebody who passed away in the kink community who was in a power dynamic, and there's a lot of indications that it was not a healthy situation. And what I wrote was, all abusive relationships look the same. They have the same beats. It is, you can tell unhealthy power dynamics are at play. They leave a mark behind them. Whereas healthy relationships are phenomenal and amazing in their diversity. You know how people will have their own little language between couples or partners. Yeah. They'll have like their little rituals. They'll have their little trip. Every healthy relationship will look totally different. Yeah. Abusive relationships look and feel the same.
Interesting. And in what way, if you can elucidate it, how so? Like, what is the mark?
And here's the thing that confuses a lot of people in BDSM and outside of it. Yeah. Everything is a power dynamic. This is a power dynamic right now, which is why I love talking with people.
Who's winning?
That's the thing. It's not about who. For me, it's like we're sharing power back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But if I walk into this, whether aware or not, that I want this to be a power dynamic and I keep trying to like dominate you, that too is a power dynamic. Yeah. But ideally, a healthy version would be, hey, I want to talk about these things. I want you to ask me questions in a certain way. So I would be topping you in that way.
I want to have the energy and then share it back and forth and bounce back and forth.
Right. We negotiate, we talk about it, and we're both enjoying what's happening versus what happens everywhere else in most of our lives, which are untalked about power dynamics. This is not just restricted to like BDSM or poly. This is like how we interact with our moms and our dads and our siblings and our bosses and our peers. Like what's happening at the head of the United States right now. Like this is all a power dynamic.
Yes, and affecting people's need for therapy, I imagine.
Oh, there's been a spike, let me tell you. But if we talked about... Yeah, no, the short answer is so many more.
As a sex therapist, people come in and go, Trump, man, Trump.
Is really? Messing with my sex life.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
I can't get wet, Trump.
Seriously, some people are just like, we feel, and to be very serious, I feel traumatized, like him being president and what's happening is bringing up my own stuff. And so I don't feel necessarily safe interacting with my partner. I've seen that. I've seen people who are just so anxious that they can't relax and just be with their partner. Like, it is very real. And that if you're trans or gender non-conforming.
Dealing with the climate change piece. And I know the logic, which is sound, that people say, right, but the best thing you could do for the future is raise kids who do believe in the climate change. But at the same time, I'm definitely fall prey to like,
that kind of.
But I want to create a life that might live through
the
massive
apocalypse.
Famine where half the world dies and there's World War III.
Right. Do I want to
know that when I made the choice to bring them into this world, I knew that might happen.
Right.
It seems like such a shitty move.
Literally, if the child is like, I didn't ask to be born, and this is what she.
And I would have to be like, I know, you're right. Like, good point. Yeah. I knew it might suck for you, but I wanted a little baby. Like, I wanted a cute little baby.
And now, like, we have to feast on it. It's like Soylent Green, and like, oh my God.
Right, yeah.
So sex, one of the things I love about being a sex therapist is sex is everything. It is economics, it is politics, it is physiology, neurology, history. It's everything. And when I talk to somebody about sex long enough, I know them. And that is fascinating.
Let me ask this. And this now I'm like, this is too revealing of myself. It waxes and wanes, but I'm starting to suspect, despite the fact that I had a very adventurous sex life early in my life, I don't have as high a sex drive as your average man, but it's confusing because it might just be that I don't have as high a sex drive as men are supposed to have as dictated by television.
Thank you. That, because I cannot tell you how many men come to me thinking like, my penis isn't a normal size. My sex drive isn't normal. And I'm like, okay, where did you get these normal ideas? And usually it's from television or porn or the bad jokes or whatever. The average, and to me, why are we striving for average? Because average when it comes to sex there is no average. There is
right,
not.
Because how do you quantify something that's so qualitatively different in every case?
Right. There is what works for you, your rhythm.
Yeah.
But there can be a lot of shame
Jen
about that.
Jen and I started judging our relationship when like everything was great, but like there was no other problem other than we asked each other, are we supposed to break up because we're not having sex X amount?
Right.
For a period of time?
Right. For X amount of time, for an X amount of frequency.
Like, well, so-and-so in that show says they have sex 5 times a month. We should aim for that. You know,
right. It's like, right, we're looking for this like outside in.
Right, yeah.
So like, that's what we should pattern ourselves. And I'm like, no, if both people aren't content with the frequency, because they are not content with it, then come to me, let me support you in like figuring out what will work. But there's no like, okay, 1 time a day is like normal, and less than that means you're like a sad deviant, and like
bring me the chart.
Right.
How many times do you have sex this week? Ooh.
Like, oh, we're gonna have to go in for surgery.
I'll
like,
tell you,
stop it.
I got my testosterone checked.
So many guys do.
Because my wife at the time constantly emasculated me in subtle ways, but B, because she was like saying you should want to have sex more often than you do, and I was like, I did when I was 19, and then it faded, and now I want to have sex this amount,
right?
And she was like, that's weird, that's not enough.
She's wrong.
Yeah, well, I know that now.
Like sometimes I will not make bones about
to this,
right,
to know that
that is wrong. There is the frequency that you were interested when you were 19, and it's going to change in your 20s, it's going to change in your 30s.
And you know what? If your stress level drops for a particular decade, you might find your sex drive booming again.
Yes.
In your 40s, you know, like it's whatever. Yeah.
Right. It really, it will take
factors.
on its own pattern. There's so many factors. And so figuring, and because that is what I see, that desire discrepancy of, oh, I want it X amount of times. And then what society does is, oh, if you read as a woman, it should look this way. You're supposed to not want it enough, or I'm supposed to convince you or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And
like
then
Jen will cite well, I'm in my early 30s now. Mm-hmm. Have you heard like the magazine statistics?
Oh my God!
That's
please,
to be
people,
female puberty.
Stop getting our sex advice from magazines.
She's like,
we
I'm
need to
supposed
stop
to be horny as hell because I'm
in my early 30, and it's like
that's the female puberty. And I'm like, I guess I read that on Cosmo one time,
which is a great source of empirically supported, high quality, nuanced reporting.
I will say one thing is in their article where they give sex tips that are always the same 10 sex tips every time. They do always mention play with his nipples. So like at least they got that.
They're
got
writing
that memo.
hard for men's nipples.
They got that memo. Yeah. We just started selling T-shirts. I really want one now that says "I ride hard for men's nipples."
I would buy that.
Tell us if you'd buy that shirt. Yeah.
I would totally buy that.
Men's nipples and like sad men's nipples crying like they need more attention.
Like literally
That's a shirt right there.
I mean, it's and I because I also work with a variety of people, not just like straight cis couples, but gender nonconforming folk, trans folk. Lesbian couples, like there's just a huge range, and what I keep running into is most of us are trapped by ideas around gender and ideas around what sex is supposed to look like. Almost everybody, no matter their orientation, no matter their gender, is having to grapple with that, and that's really the work that I want to do, is undo that. Find your sexuality. I
personally believe everything is a spectrum. Like, I don't think there exists anything in the universe that is not a spectrum.
Right.
So sexuality and gender are obviously spectra.
Right. Like,
so, but we're still developing the language for me to say this the correct way. But what I want to ask is, so when you're working with people who I self-identify as LGBTQIA, NB, anyone who feels like there's scant little storytelling that taught me how to feel about my sexuality. Do you find the practice different or the same as like a vanilla person coming in? Like, I'm wondering if it takes on an aspect of helping navigate why I'm oppressed and like minimized by society versus a straight dude just might be like, how do I break the idea of anal with my partner?
Right.
That's so different than why is my sexuality not accepted by the society in which I live?
Right. Like the depth of what they're struggling with in the context.
I'm sorry, in retrospect, how did that sex therapist get bored? Already, I'm like, I can think of a million different questions and cases. Yeah.
Right. That's, and when that person said that, in the back of my head, I was like, I won't probably be referring anybody.
You're not paying attention then. Yeah.
Right, you're not paying attention. Because I will tell you, like when I worked at so I worked at the Pleasure Chest and a couple of other places, and it got boring at one point and then it stopped being boring. People, you're working 8 hours a day on your feet, and you get asked the same questions. That is a job where you get asked the same question. Where are the condoms? What are the lubes? Why does anybody need lube? Yeah. What are these like you get a lot of. And I remember thinking at one point, I was so bored with people asking the same questions that I literally just answered 5 minutes ago. And I remember thinking, either I'm going to start to hate this work and hate these clients, or I need to fall in love with it's new for them. Yeah. I may have answered this question 20 times today, but it's new for them. And can I fall in love with that it's new for them? And everything changed for me after that.
That's such a universal skill that has everything to do with everything, like not just sex therapy, and yet also so applicable during sex. Being mindful and present makes you fall in love with the present moment. Like
over and over again. What am I going to find this time?
That's the big truth I've come to over and over again in my life is
say more.
Let the present moment unfold like a gift, and like it will always deliver.
It will. It'll never be exactly what you thought. It'll be something you can never have even imagined.
Sometimes it'll deliver like bitter tragedy, but if you're open to the experience, your life will still be a rich tapestry of emotion, which is something.
Will. Yes, which at the end of the day is everything.
Instead of just being a tapestry of like thoughts about the future and ruminating on the past. Which
so you're never actually
get into.
Yeah. And sex really at its best is, people are always, how do I be a great lover? How to be a great lover? Da, da, da. And be in your body and allow the other person to be in their body. Yeah. Breathe, look at each other, and keep being in the present moment and stay curious.
Yeah.
That's how you be a great lover.
And
it's never just technique. It's
absolutely.
never like the particular position. Casanova cleaned up because he fell deeply in love with all the different women he was with because he was intensely curious about them. How does your body work? How does it smell? How does it sound? How does it taste? That's erotic.
I agree. Okay, so wait, before we get off track. So yeah, when you work with trans people or intergender people or asexual people, have you had an asexual client?
I have.
It's fairly rare, but
well, no, there's actually a really like grayscale is one phrase that people use, asexual to demisexual.
Sure.
And there's a lot of misunderstanding about how asexuality or demisexuality functions.
I'm totally ignorant.
And a lot of it, and I had to learn, and this is again what's exciting about sex. I am still learning. I know a bunch, and I could never know even close to everything, but I'm getting better at questions.
Sure.
So there's a lot of misconceptions like asexual people never have sexual interest or they never have sex. And there are some where that's true. And then there's others who do have sex and who do experience sexual attraction. They might experience it just for themselves, or they might not choose to act on it. So there's all these, again, variations and spectrums of what seems simple. And like, it's not, food is not simple, art is not simple, sexuality is not simple.
Yeah.
And I want people to keep that in mind.
How do you deal with, because I know Jen, I believe, even took some training in transference and dealing with transference, which if you're unfamiliar with the word is the idea of, and I can see why, like it's never happened to me, but I get it. If you're in a really low point in your life, and I mean this is a set of traditional therapy, and you go to a therapist and they happen to be whatever gender you're attracted to, and let's say they're the only person in your life at this time, at this dark time, that's like nice and seems non-judgmental and caring, you get a crush on them. And they have to like curtail that because it's just, they're just doing that because you paid them to. That's what they do. I imagine that's got to be a special hazard with sex therapy, or am I wrong? Like, is that a misconception?
Yeah, well, I taught a class recently called The Erotics of Sex Therapy.
Pushing boundaries with you, and you have to go,
I wouldn't say
role,
like pushing.
This is my role.
I've never had anybody like push a boundary in a way that made me feel either physically unsafe
or have to set the boundary,
right, in a really like harsh, like, dude, no, down.
Okay,
like
good.
That's never happened. But I think it's because I create an open enough room for all the permutations that are going to happen between two people. And when I did that class, The Erotics of Sex Therapy, it was because we are talking about sex, two people in a room. How can that not engender this feeling of eros and this feeling of sexuality explicitly? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And so learning for a therapist to learn how to flow with that and then how to use that in a way that's beneficial for the client is because there is a way to do that, and that's what I do. And
even right now, like, I don't ascribe that to like sexual attention, but there's a feeling of almost that you'd have as a little kid, where I'm like, Jamila's coming over. We're gonna talk about Hoo-Hahs and peonies. Right. I don't usually talk about that.
Right. There's inherently what I call like eros. There's inherently an excitement when we start talking about sex.
Exactly.
One, because it is so hidden, and two, because like for most of us, sex is this energetic, interesting thing.
Yeah. Hardwired.
Right. For many of us. And so there's definitely been times where a client expressed like sexual interest. When I will, if they can understand it as that's completely normal and healthy and nothing's going to come of that.
Right.
And you're not going to, again, use unhealthy power dynamics and try to push towards that, then I can completely work with that.
Right.
But I've definitely had...
You're allowed to express that solely as a thought occurring to you. That's
as a
fine.
normal, healthy expression. Totally. And then I've definitely had a couple of who did not become clients because I kiboshed it. Men who contacted me of like, oh, I really want to work with you. And like, you seem like the right person for me because like I really love Black women and I want to and then they're off and running and I'm like, you're not paying me $5 a minute for this, so I'm hanging up.
Gotcha.
So very quickly I had to get good at deciphering
each additional minute.
Exactly. So yeah, but that I want people to experience, and even like when we were talking about power dynamics, like I'm going to call it out for the audience. Your face was getting red. And I think,
That's
when we were talking
funny.
about power dynamics.
I don't feel, at least not on a high conscious level, like I don't feel embarrassed, but
Good.
I believe you.
And like, but to me, there is always, and the redness isn't, and this, hey people, when you're trying to do sex therapy, I can't say, oh, your face was red because.
Oh, right,
and
right,
so
right.
often that's what we do. Oh, your tone is this, your body's doing this, so it must be that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just going with the observation. Your face got red, which told me there was some shift in their physiology.
Right, but then you have to ask, so what's your emotional state right now? Maybe it's worth unpacking, maybe not, right.
And all I could read is some level of like adjustment or excitement. That's it. After that, I don't know. That could be anxiety. Excitement is anxiety.
I'll introspect later about that at 3 a.m.
right. But I say that all to say that that power dynamics are happening all the time, and talking about bodies is inherently exciting.
Yeah.
And if we learn to get more fluent in it, then we can ride the excitement in a way that's ethical, in a way that's yummy for both people.
Sorry to keep. I mean, we could do another episode because
I love talking about sex. I get to talk about sex all the time.
This is
love it.
evolving into.
There you go.
Usually my questions like build off each other, but there's so many questions. I'm just spinning the dial. So another one would be
good sex is cyclical.
You mentioned there you go. You mentioned a rise in polyamory, or clients who are poly are asking about poly issues. Mm-hmm. To what do you attribute that rise, if anything? But I think my more sincere question is B, what's your advice for someone who wants to try that and have it work out? Because as everyone who has like a large group of liberal Hollywood friends, I know a fair share of people in poly relationships. The minority of them find stability.
Right.
Right. And I'm a believer in like, just because you didn't get married and have kids and stay together for the rest of your life, it's weird how people say, well, that relationship failed. I've met people where it's like, but you were together for 8 years and you learned deep truths about yourself.
Right, about yourself and the other person.
And they're like, right, but we are still alive and not married. So it doesn't mean it failed. So I'm not calling all poly relationships that fall apart a failure either. But at the same time, I have to recognize everyone going into a poly relationship is trying to conquer jealousy. That's been the idea of jealousy ingrained in us. And the minority of people I know are able to do that.
Actually, well, I would say like the problems around or the challenges around open relationships, and actually I'm going to take a step back. At this point, I only talk in terms of ethical non-monogamy. Because that covers swingers, that covers people who identify as polyamorous, it covers people in the BDSM community who have multiple partners, it covers don't ask, don't tell, it covers people who are in mono-polyamorous relationships, it covers, so what I'm interested in supporting people to do is have ethical non-monogamous relationships. So when you're trying to do that, you are up against like 100+ years of some of the best propaganda ever. Every song, every movie, every card, I'm sorry, Lifetime or Hallmark Channel, like so much is arrayed against you. The legal, like the laws of this country are arrayed against you. So you're already starting off really like under some significant pressure, and you expect a relationship to thrive under like the crushing weight of all of that. So it's not a surprise that a lot of them don't make it. I think the ones that do, there's usually a variety of supports. There's multiple people in the person's lives. It's not just the 2 people or the 3 people trying to do it. They have people in their life who are supporting the relationship and their growth. And you've got to learn. It's really its own culture and its own language. I did not, when I went to Paris, I did not go, I'm going to go there and I will speak fluently today. Like it took the entire time I was there to even somewhat get acclimated. And people want poly or ethical non-monogamous relationships to work just like that. And sometimes it's not even the jealousy that people are struggling with. It's, there's all kinds of self-knowledge that's there to learn. Sometimes jealousy is it, sometimes insecurity about your own place in things, sometimes our own relational patterns from our families of origin, sometimes like, oh, I didn't realize that when I'm really stressed, even if I'm happy, I show up like this. That's not jealousy. That's just like, oh, a lot of like attention or hyper, a lot of stuff going on in my life makes me act in these ways. I get more snappish or whatever. So there's all these different challenges that come with it, and the possibilities. And why I think people are trying it is because there's so much possibility in other humans.
Yeah.
And to restrict sexuality or deep care to only one person when we're learning that there's so much in the world, and we're living longer, that a lot of people, I think they're like, I want a variety of experiences in all dimensions of my life. And that's not to say that monogamy doesn't offer that. What I want for monogamous folk is for them too to understand you have the choice, so many choices. Are you deeply living each of those choices? Are you choosing your partner over and over again? Are you staying curious? Or are you just like, oh, I'm on the people mover of relationship? And so
that was the value for me in having even sexual experiences that weren't enjoyable to me in and of themselves. But like now I know, and it does provide a great sense of peace. Like I know that I'm built to, in some way, prefer monogamy to poly.
Yeah.
So like I'll never have to wonder about that again, which I enjoy.
Right.
And like from my handful of gay experiences, which I sort of went for after my own father came out. And again, because of my knowledge of how propaganda and conditioning works, my question for myself was, is it possible you're gay and don't even know it or have the feelings because you won't allow yourself to? So I like went out of my way to have a few gay experiences, and to me it like made me realize that there's aspects I can enjoy, but I'm largely straight on the spectrum. And so it's just, to me, what I think is interesting is a lot of people hear that and be like, you had kinds of sex that you're not? That's crazy. Like, if you're gay...
Yes, I've tried foods that were not my typical
you
foods
had
I
sex
like.
with a woman, but you knew you were gay? Why would you do that? And it's like, I don't know, because there's a lot of stuff to do in life. You can try a lot and be like, that was interesting.
Glad I tried that. I like, maybe I'll try that again. Maybe I won't.
That's how I feel about blowing dudes.
Right. I'm just like, okay.
Glad I tried it a couple times.
Right. And I'm good for now. Like, and
Good
that.
for now.
Right.
I'm good for now.
Like, and again, it's that thing
Keep
of like,
keep it warm. Maybe I'll be back.
Right. Keep it on like 200 so it doesn't
semi-chubbed up for the next 25 years in case I change my mind.
Just a constant chub, like semi-chub. And it's like, what would our sex lives be like? And particularly for cis men, if we understood that sexuality is fluid and that having sex with the same gender or similar gender just means you had sex with somebody of the same gender, similar. That's what it means.
It might provide a facet of knowledge about your sexual identity. Yeah. But it doesn't mean, oh, you're in that category now.
Right.
You did that.
Right. Now you are. And
a
I
lot
see
of people seem to think that way.
Yes.
I think, so.
And I see a lot of straight women, sadly enough, who like, oh, my boyfriend wants me to play with his ass. He must be gay. And it's like, oh my. No, that's still out there. Still out there.
Someone just tweeted and it went viral that like it's a sin to blow your husband as a straight woman because you're engaging in a gay act.
To me, that just made it all the hotter.
You suck your husband's dick?
Right.
What are you, a lesbian? Like, that's insane. What is the logic there?
It's a very interesting logic to say the least. Yeah. Like now blowjobs just took on a whole other. Oh my god, so much fun. but these ideas, right? That like. That are in people's heads that are keeping them from pleasure, from connection, from exploring their possibilities and the possibilities of other people.
And even just freedom from shame. Like, even forget pleasure. Like, just the fact not that so many sexual activities where no one is hurt and everyone consents make people feel guilt and shame. Can we at least just strip that out? You know? Yeah, for sure.
And that is so much of my work is what are your principles? And if your principles are, for me, my principles are around, and most people, if you ask them like, what ethical code do you live by? Sadly enough, a lot of people can't say. And to me, I think it's actually really important that you know when times are tough, what you stand for. Yeah. And that you weave that into your life. And people are always shocked as a therapist. I'm not terribly different talking with you than I am in the room with my clients, than I am when I'm out, because I am guided by my particular ethical code. And that means boundaries are important to me, no matter where I am. That means consent is important to me. Negotiation, fun, and pleasure are all important to me.
Full disclosure, I am interviewing Jamila through a hole in a sheet, which she insisted upon.
It's got lace.
Boundaries is written on it.
Right. And so
but in lipstick.
Right, because
so
that just
like
makes
mixed messages. Yeah.
That makes it all see, everybody, it's really
yeah. Well, I'm a professional comedian, so I gotta fudge with the boundaries a little bit.
Which is its own interesting thing, right? Like,
oh my gosh, well, what all the comedy writers I know who care about other human beings in a genuine way are trying to navigate is, of course, offense is a spectrum. And you can't really be a working comedian without at some point putting your foot in your mouth and having someone in the audience be really hurt and telling you, and you have to just go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that joke. And there's comedians on the side of, no, comedians born to say whatever.
Right.
And comedians on the side of, like, of course I don't make a rape joke or a, sexual exploitation joke, but what if I make a joke about the time I broke my arm? And someone in the front row just broke their arm that day, and it's really true. Like, you see,
I think there has
anything
to be
you say could specifically hurt someone in the audience.
Well, here's what I love
Where's
about...
the line of, like, love and
do you
comedy?
know? Right.
Because I didn't... It's
These are
weird.
good
I think a lot of
questions.
comedians think they became comedians to piss people off.
Yeah.
I became a comedian to make as many people as happy at once as possible.
Which feels actually very, like, old school, actually. I'm just like, oh my God, that's like vaudeville level.
But what's weird about comedy is it is
Like,
also based on taboo.
Right.
So surprising people by pushing the taboo can give them this sense of eros
Right.
and joy
Right.
and fill the room with that same feeling of we're
Yes.
excited, we're titillated.
Yes.
So how do you get people into that space where they feel a little drunk on the community and
I think that's a great way to
open
put it.
laugh?
Right, at these things that they wouldn't normally...
When you know that mentioning taboo topics, and then you get a comedian like Louis C.K., where all he does is mention taboo topics, and then it turns out he's a fucking
predator,
monster walking the earth.
Right.
It makes you feel like,
Well, that's the thing.
where is the soul of loving comedy? It's very interesting.
And I actually think I would listen to somebody talk about, like, loving comedy and what they think that means. I think smart comedians, just like the Shakespearean fool, they told the truth and they were understanding that there is a system at play. Boring comics just talk about, like, oh my God, there was this jelly peanut butter and jelly sandwich and it was so annoying to make and the bread just went. I'm like, but the brilliant ones, the ones who elated us and the ones that we deeply miss are the ones who fucked with us around systems because they understood there was one.
And I think importantly,
and there was something bigger that they were aiming towards.
Powerful systems.
Right. Always.
Punching up versus
Always.
punching down is, of course, a great rule of thumb in the sense that you can be titillated by the fact that the taboo is, can he say that? Can he question the very foundational nature of society?
Of what we do?
Yeah.
Right. And those are the ones we remember.
And take for granted. Yeah.
Right. So there's your short answer.
Oh, this has been so delightful. We're way over out of time. That's not true. We're 60 seconds over out of time.
It's like an eon.
I'm going to wrap it up anyway. So, I plan to go on at length for the introduction to this episode. So it'll probably be a pretty long episode when it's all said and done. I've been meaning to talk about my sexual odyssey for a long time. So that's going to be this episode. Yeah.
Did you get a little bit of that in?
Well, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying is it'll all be saved for the intro.
Excellent.
Which the listeners already heard because, as we discussed beforehand, we didn't want to put you on the spot of doing anything while we're talking that resembles a session.
Right.
Because then you would be broadcasting a therapy session.
And that could get weird.
Boundaries.
Right. But I did a little poking at you, like somatically.
But no. If you want to hear all the juicy stuff, you're going to have to listen intro. Like everyone else.
Awesome. Ooh, topping from the other side. Yes.
Exactly. Gives you a reason to listen to this episode.
Well, thank you.
Jamila, you're just a fabulous guest. Thank you for being out there doing wonderful work. More people should be sex therapists. Sounds fun and very useful to society.
That's the goal.
All right.
The goal. Thank you so much. Oh, people can find me at my website, jamiladawson.com, or on Instagram at Jamila D Sex Therapy.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!